is fundamentally reinventing what the stack of work looks like.
Probably the most common question I get is, I don't know what it is to be a mother, to bring up, my kids in the future.
There are 15-year-olds right now building virtual worlds. You would have never thought that would have been possible.
Nancy Xu compares the discovery of AI to humanity's discovery of fire. It can potentially change everything, but like fire, it can be used for both good and bad. As the CEO and co-founder of the Bay Area-based company Moonhub, the world's first AI-powered recruiter, she's already a pioneer. Today, she joins us to share her wildest prediction for the future of AI recruiting and much more. Welcome to the show, Nancy.
Thanks for having me, Tom. It's a pleasure.
So it's a predictable question, which hopefully you're sort of ready for as a result of. But what would you say is your wildest prediction for the future?
My wildest prediction for the future is that by 2030, we will have more AI agents than people in this world.
That's quite soon.
Absolutely. I think we're getting, with the foundation models moving so quickly, I think we're getting there.
Does this mean they're going to be taking our jobs, or are they going to be augmenting our jobs?
It's a great question. When I think at a very high level, I'm very excited by the potential for AI agents to augment human work and to allow people to work at a higher level of abstraction than we currently can today. So when I think about the future of work, I think there will be more jobs in the future, not less, and really helping people think at another level of abstraction where the work of 10 people on a single team today, you could have one person managing a team of 10 AI agents to do that job and enabling more people to be managers of agents, think at another higher level than they do today.
And I want to be quite sort of specific here, because you're talking specifically about AI agents. Now, I'm aware the world of AI is full of quite vague terminology. People are sort of throwing around chatbots and LLMs. What specifically are you referring to when you're talking about an AI agent?
At a very core level, the way I think about AI agents are AI models that can take actions, agentic models, right? Now, there are different levels of complexity you can have for an AI agent. When I was back at Stanford doing my PhD and we were pioneering the early work in AI agents, the fundamental research in the early 2020s was very much, how do we just get a model to do anything on the web? Click a button, help you book your airlines. But now it's become a lot more complex, right? So when you think about AI agents, it's not just those small tasks, but it's increasingly entire units of work, entire processes, and I think more into the future, perhaps even the bandwidth of what a single person might do in a role today.
And how do these work today? Because at times they almost seem a bit like kind of automatic button pressures, where you kind of tell it to go to this website, go to that field, get that number from that spreadsheet. It's almost like a kind of a manual recording process that you then replicate automatically. Like how does the kind of process where we're training these agents, to what extent does the software need to be written with them in mind?
We reinvented the computing layer with AI, right? I think no one has any questions about that. And now what you're seeing is the value for AI is accruing in what I call the application layer. And that's where, I think we're going to have a world where you can almost imagine we'll have AI training centers building AI agents, much like we train people today. And then the question then becomes, okay, what are those AI agents, really going to do for us, right? And I think when you think about how to actually build an AI agent, there's several components, right? There's the model, which we all think about, which, some of these AI agents can be built on top of OpenAI, Anthropic, pick your favorite model. And, to give credit where credit is due, these folks are doing amazing work in the foundation model layer. But I think on a large part, that layer is consolidating to a few larger players. And then the question then becomes, okay, on top of those large players, what are the interesting applications? What are the interesting AI agents that we can build? And that's where, AI agents, yes, there's the core model, but there's a lot more to it. It's about, can you capture the chain of reasoning that an expert today in that job goes through? And can you capture the world knowledge that the expert has to deliver on the job to be done? Right, let me give you an example. There are a lot of people today who are recruiters. And at Moonhub, we actually work with these expert recruiters and automated AI systems, which a lot of people, I think, don't think about as much, to actually understand and interpret the specialized recruiting knowledge needed to help an AI agent perform and work with recruiters. An example of this is not everyone who works at Google has experience working on search products, right? There are people at Google who work on some of the more tangible, like ads. But you need that sort of expert domain knowledge to build really good agents. So you have to think about it from the foundation model layer, from what are the workflows and the expert domain specific knowledge, what are the reasoning chains within this field, and then of course ultimately what is the delivery and the user experience for these agents.
So how does Moonhub work today, and what's it like as a kind of candidate, and what's it like as a recruiter?
The way Moonhub works today is we partner with companies to help them as their external recruiting partner. And so if you are a company out there, 90% of companies in the world, it turns out, work with external recruiters. And with Moonhub, the experience, we enable companies to see 10 times more qualified candidates, which is ultimately the job to be done. And we do it 10 times more and faster. And so if you're a company working with Moonhub, you would come to us, run an intake call with one of our AI tutors, as we call them, and they will actually go and deploy our AI agents on your behalf and then show you candidates that are a good fit for your opportunity. So you get the same experience that you're used to today, but with the benefits of AI agents behind the scenes working for you.
And are these kind of like bot-like mechanisms, are they scraping LinkedIn to find people? Are they looking through submitted resumes? Are they looking at people's search history and finding out what people are interested in? Like, to what extent is it kind of an innovation on top of the existing infrastructure versus a new structure?
There's the data layer. You're exactly right. Where there's data across the public web on individuals. There's also what we call more of the proprietary data section, which is more about information that you might collect talking to a candidate or based on your interactions with a candidate. And we sit on top of all of that data. And the real innovation happens when you are able to, with the modern technologies and AI, specifically in large language models as applied to search, you can now look over billions of profiles on the public web and find 10 times more people than you otherwise would have been able to find. I'll give you a concrete example. Today, if you were to go look for a software engineer, you might say, hey, show me people who specifically say they have the word software engineer in their profile. But it turns out not everyone who is a software engineer says they're a software engineer. Some people might call themselves a member of a technical staff, which is what people at OpenAI typically use. And there are so many other ways to describe your work, or even people who don't even advertise that they're a software engineer, but have the skill sets based on their contributions to open source. And these are all people who, with the traditional methods, pre-AI large language models, would not have been successfully identified, but post-AI large language models with our AI recruiters and our agents can actually be found today.
Kind of, in sort of boring pragmatic terms, if I'm, I don't know, let's say I'm looking for a team of product managers and I've got my startup and my funding, is this a sort of script that runs in the background? Is this, do I type in a query that says, find 25 people with this GPA within this distance, and it sort of bubbles up information that way? Like, in quite boring detail, how does it work as someone looking for someone?
As a customer of Moonhub today, you would talk to one of our AI tutors who would deploy the system. In terms of how the AI tutor deploys the system, they would take all of the information you shared, describe right to the AI, hey, I talked to so-and-so, he needs to find someone who is a software engineer, has been at an early stage startup before, has experience working on search, et cetera, government security clearance, whatever it is you're looking for. And the AI will go out, find those people for you, engage those people with outreaches, get them excited, answer their questions through a process that's relatively instantaneous, right? So for a candidate, instead of waiting 2 days, maybe you're getting ghosted by the recruiter is always on top of it, replying to you, in this case with AI. And then ultimately, once you're interested, helping you schedule time with an actual person to screen you, help you answer your questions, and then present you to the company that's hiring for this role.
And how much of that stuff is kind of automated versus human in the loop versus person just doing what they have done for a while?
AI is fundamentally reinventing what the stack of work looks like.
Okay.
today the AI agents are running all of the behind the scenes work for recruiters. And increasingly, I think, the really exciting part about AI agents is I think we're going to live in a world very soon where many people will need to become managers of agents. So I think a lot of people are trained to do a job well, but there is a big transition from doing a job to learning how to explain how to do a job to someone else, in this case, an AI. And so, one of the biggest roles that I have and our team has at Moonhub is actually teaching our AI tutors not just how to be good recruiters, which they are in many cases, but actually teaching them how to work with AI agents and have the AI agents be good recruiters. And I think this is a broader trend you'll see. When I go back to the prediction of more AI agents than people by 2030, what does that actually mean? That means we need to teach a lot of people how to work with AI agents more effectively.
Are there things that they're particularly well suited for that are surprising?
The way I think about AI agents and the opportunity, you look at every service or resource that a person today with sufficient capital has access to, and AI agents will democratize that for everyone. So, one thing that's always been really impressive, I think, Tom, is the fact that whether you are a high schooler in Georgia or if you are a billionaire in the world today, you largely, almost everyone has an iPhone. And with AI agents, you'll get something similar, right? I think it'll take the personal tutors of the ultra wealthy or the assistants that they have access to, and that it will make it possible for everyone to have that level of service and resource. So in terms of where the opportunities are for AI agents, I really think it is endless. Like, you can just think of almost anything. And ultimately, it's about the job to be done, right? I think when you think about agents, what is the job to be done? In Moonhub's case, our job to be done is to help introduce qualified candidates to hiring managers and help engage more candidates for those hiring managers. What is the job to be done for if you are a hospital? Your job to be done is to make sure you have more healthy patients. Your job to be done is not to have a ton of doctors, right? And ultimately, I think if you think about it from those lens, basically any job to be done that a person engages in today, you can start to think about what would it take to build an AI agent to do that. And then how do you train people to become managers of these AI agents so that that unit of work can now be available to more people at scale?
There's a lot of people kind of enjoy making quite outlandish claims, and you never really know whether they're saying it to get attention or whether they're saying it because they believe in it. So when Sam Altman was talking about the first kind of unicorn, that's just run by one person and then lots of bots, you you wonder the degree to which that's sort of fanciful versus, desirable versus practical. What sort of interests me is I think a lot of the conversations talk about, replacement, and they talk about cheaper and faster. I get much more excited when it's about things that are better, and I think it's easy to look at Uber as being a replacement for a taxi driver. But actually what Uber's done in some areas, it means that people go out of the house when they wouldn't have gone out before because it had been too much effort. I think about technology that allows us to do more things that we wouldn't have otherwise done. So the thinking of an agent as allowing people to perform their jobs much better by doing them in ways that we didn't imagine before, I think becomes a lot more sort of exciting.
The first level is lower cost, easy to use, accurate. And the second level becomes, how do you actually make that experience, one, more available because of the lower cost, but two, it's a better experience because you're making the people who do that work today more productive or more performant in their job.
Yeah, I'm sort of hoping we get to the stage where it's not how do we do what we've always done better, but how do we do things that we didn't even dream about doing before because it never occurred to us that it might even be feasible. When you're sort of using this within the recruitment setting, is it starting to sort of change the parameters that people are looking for in talent? What particular types of people are kind of well suited towards this sort of recruitment mechanism?
You've probably heard this a lot in the AI space, that ultimately it comes down to data. Data drives a lot of AI. And for recruiting today, what that means is, I think AI recruiters will be the most successful early on in places where you have a lot of data. So think about this tends to be, in many cases, some of the more white collar roles, for example, where individuals will benefit from having more access to opportunity because of AI recruiters to start. Over time,
Okay.
of course, you can think about other forms of data or access that can make these AI recruiters more productive in other fields. That if I were to make a bet, to start it largely boils down to where is the data most available.
There's obviously very different types of data, so it's quite easy to look for people's GPAs. It's quite easy to look for people's universities, and then you get to things that are less about sort of categorizable attributes, and they're more about values, or they're more about motivations, or they're more about how they work with others, or I guess an element of like bias. How do you start to use data to make decisions or recommendations when it comes to much more subjective things like that?
I think there's two steps. The first step is I think that AI can actually make our systems less biased. I think we talk a lot about, oh, this AI reads resumes and it's extremely biased in selecting XYZ person. My experience has actually been largely the opposite with Moonhub. And it turns out actually people are inherently very biased. And I'll give you a very concrete example. Today, if you were to have a recruiter and you tell them, hey, I need you to hire a really great software engineer, what a lot of recruiters will go do is basically type in, show me people who work at Google and went to Stanford.
Yeah.
Now, that limits the pool vastly. But because a human is ultimately rate limited by how much time they have, they go for the easiest, shortest path to finding the person that they're looking for, which in this case, might be Google and Stanford. Now, the power of AI is that you are no longer rate limited in many cases by how many profiles you can review. So you can go for the less obvious profiles that a human might not look for, because you might have to dig through 5,000 profiles of ex-UPS drivers to find one who might be a good software engineer. And no person would do that today, but the AI can. And that's actually a great example. We, a couple of months ago, actually helped one of our customers find someone who's an amazing software engineer, and their first job out of college was as a UPS driver here in the United States. That's just not something as a recruiter that's limited by bandwidth today, you would even be able to have the capacity to go look for people like that.
I'm always amazed how much recruitment seems to be about avoidance of blame, actually. It sounds sort of slightly rude, but I kind of get the sense that people don't want to make bad decisions, and they're optimizing more about reducing the risk of something terrible happening. And often they use criteria which are most easily to defend, so no one gets sort of fired if they hire someone from Google, for example. To what extent can this software help sort of increase the variance of people within the funnel of people that are looked for? Like, to what extent can it act as a blame taker if you make a bad decision?
I think it's very important to build AI systems that in our space primarily open up the aperture, not reduce the aperture. So in what we have seen with AI is that we always lean on the side of being more open than closed. So we would rather, we show our customers 10x more candidates than they typically would see working with a traditional recruiter, as opposed to 10x fewer candidates. And you're right, there are some pieces that are subjective, right? Hey, is this person a great communicator? And in those cases, we teach our AI to lean on the more, to be more lenient. If you're not certain, let them through and let's evaluate them in a proper interview process. That has been our approach. I think it's important. I think there's a very fine balance between how much evaluation the AI does, as opposed to how much the AI is primarily helping open the aperture, which is our focus today.
What surprised you the most in this sort of journey so far?
The space is moving a lot faster than I had expected when we first started Moonhub 2 years ago. Before this, I was back at Stanford. We were working on a lot of the foundational research in the space, and Um, and I spent a lot of time early on in math. And in that world, they all say all mathematicians are lazy. I think that's there's some degree of truth in that. And because of that, I've always dreamed of this idea of having an AI companion or someone who could help you do a lot of the work that you do. And to be honest, I never thought it would be possible for a good 20, 30 years, Tom. And in the last 3 years, so much has happened in the AI space. One at the foundation model layer, but there's a lot of that is maturing. The models are good, and we talk a lot about sort of getting models to PhD plus level, but it turns out most jobs today you don't even need a PhD to be really successful. And the models, even that the sort of foundational large language models we have today, are in many ways good enough to help a lot of people in a lot of jobs already. And so that's been really surprising to me, just how fast this space has moved. I had some bets on the space and it's moved a lot faster than I had anticipated. And just generally, the willingness for people to adopt AI has been wonderful to see.
I mean, people's attitude varies quite a lot, but a lot of people are quite scared by this. Probably the most common question I get is, I don't know what it is to be a mother, to bring up, my kids in the future. What would you say to those people that are quite worried about the next generation and what this means for their careers and their lives and their meaning?
There's a lot we still need to figure out with AI, and I'll be the first to acknowledge it. That said, what I am confident about is that AI will enable all of us, the next generation, to be able to operate at a level of abstraction and with a level of hopefully access that has never been possible before. And that's something I'm really excited about, right? More creativity for every single person, more access to tooling, right? So first it was, let's make sure everyone has access to books. Then it was, let's make sure everyone has access to the internet. I really think the next thing will be, let's make sure everyone has access to their own AI agent. And think about all the cool things that people can build. And I'm constantly still impressed by, there are 15-year-olds right now building virtual worlds. You would have never thought that would have been possible, 10 years ago. And I think I have a lot of excitement around what that will look like when it comes to giving people more access to AI agents. That said, I think we all have a responsibility to use it in a thoughtful way. And there will be some regulation that will play a part of it. And I have a lot of thoughts on what those regulations should look like. But at a very high level, I think there's a lot that still needs to play out. But I think there's a lot to be excited about for the future.
When sort of AIs are writing to people, do you make it clear that they're dealing with an AI, or do they not know?
So we have our AI tutors actually verify every single message that gets sent out before it's sent out. So there is never anything that goes out right now that is not actually touched by a person today.
I'm sort of fascinated by the variety of different attitudes towards dealing with an AI. Like there are applications like therapy where I kind of presume that the point of therapy was to know that a human being could be bothered to listen. And the moment that you're having therapy with not a human, it immediately loses all of its value. But it does turn out that that's actually nonsense, and that in many instances, therapists can be better as AI because people don't feel embarrassed, or they're more likely to be open. I found myself having kind of customer service conversations with AIs where I've been annoyed because I think, subconsciously this is telling me that company doesn't value my time enough to employ someone from the Philippines on $5 an hour to talk to me. So it's fascinating to see how people's sort of attitudes towards this stuff are evolving and the degree to which it's offensive versus sort of efficient. And with a lot of this technology, I'm reminded of what it is like to kind of grow up before a technology and during it. I look at my old boss in my first job and the way that he would sort of type into his keyboard. He'd sort of type like he was a typewriter and sort of press hard. And I'd sort of look at that and I'd laugh at how he was responding to it. And then I see myself kind of adapting to this technology and trying to use the technology. And at times I feel a bit like my old boss, kind of trying to navigate a new paradigm. So it's kind of fascinating to see what will happen to people that just grew up with this expectation and this sort of behavior in their minds. With that in mind, do you have a kind of like a vision for the future that you can sort of paint? When these sort of agentic workflows are created, when software has been sort of constructed with this level of access designed into it, what kind of world will we live in, and what are the kind of wonderful new possibilities you think that we might see?
Yeah, going back to my original prediction when we first started here, Tom, when you think about a world where there are more AI agents than people, what does that actually mean? That means every one of us will have access to our own personal AI agents. And that means personal tutors, personal doctors, personal recruiters that help you make career decisions. And the list goes on. And that future to me is incredibly exciting because it means more access for more people, right? We're essentially taking a lot of the resources that people of the 1% today have access to and making it possible for everyone to have that tutor for their kid, or for that, everyone to have that personal doctor who's available to them 24/7. And then when you have that, what does that mean for people? It means we can now operate at a level of creativity and hopefully impact for each person on this planet that they don't have today. And I think those two ideas combined will paint a very exciting future of what it will look like for all of us to have AI agents.
That makes sense. And just finally, why did you call the company Moonhub?
The hub for moonshots.
I like it. Nancy, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Tom. It was great.